Okay, I think I'm going to start. I'm going to say that I am super excited about sharing something about my hoping that next year, next summer, some of you might be able to join me. So this is my excavation. This is my tell. It's located in the very north of Israel, and you can see the beautiful scenery. This is Tel Abel Bet Macha. It's right under the Hermon mountain, and you can see to the north, the very northern city of Israel, Metula. And here we're already in Lebanon, in Marj Ayun. In ancient times, that this would have been the road leading to the Phoenician coast. And you can see here the Chula Valley and the location of Abel Bet Macha right here. This is north of the Sea of Galilee and just 70 kilometers to Damascus, which is important during the Iron Age because around Damascus begins to be very hostile towards Israel and other nations. And you can see here the Phoenician coast, and the distance is only 35 kilometers. It's very, very close. Tel Chatzor. Chatzor was a huge city, a mega city during the Bronze Age. And in the beginning of the Iron Age, it begins as a very, very small village, but then rose into one of the urban centers of the ancient Israelite kingdom. And the way that I know that this specific mound should be identified with biblical Abel Bet Macha is because of this village that was photographed in 1945 before the Israelite state. And you can see here a village called Tel Abel El Kamech. Tel Abel El Kamech preserves the ancient name of Abel. And other campaigns described in the biblical narrative, actually two campaigns, military campaigns, one in the 9th century by Ben-Hadad the Aramean, and the other in the 8th century by Tiglath-Pileser. They both describe this type of campaign going through a kind of a geographical order, and Abel Bet Macha is right where we expect it to be. The only interesting thing is that at Abel Bet Macha, we know very well the 9th century, but to a lesser extent, the 8th century. We actually have no remains from this period on mound. Another source that mentions Abel Bet Macha is the famous story of a wise woman. I have no time to read it out. I would just say that it discusses a rebel who rebels against David. His name is Sheva ben Bichri, and he runs as far as he can, and he reaches Abel Bet Macha. And Yoav, Job, the military commander, pursues him, gets to the tell, and there's, according to the story, a wise woman who asks him to please do not destroy my city, and what do you want? And in the way she talks, she says to him a few very important things. She says, in the past, they would always say, let them inquire in Abel, meaning that there is a strong memory of this place being a place of divination, of question asking. They used to say, let us inquire in Abel, and that is how they settle things. And she also says, I represent the peaceful and the faithful in Israel. Why you are attempting to destroy a mother and a city in Israel. And this is interesting to me because whenever this text was written down, it still preserves the idea that people living in this area are actually living on a border. And they are not, they have to prove that they belong. And this is a main question of our excavations. Who are the people of Abel Bet Macha? They're residing between the Phoenicians, the Arameans, and the Israelites. Who do they belong to? According to the biblical tradition, they belong to the Israelites. And of course, sometimes taken over by Arameans or the opposite. And you can see here that today, this place, this is a satellite picture of the Tel, and you can see that today, we're sitting on the border with Lebanon. This is a demilitarized zone, but up here is already Syria. And so the same situation then was the same situation today is what was then, some kind of a border zone. And if you asked Israel Finkelstein, for example, from Tel Aviv University, he would tell you that in the beginning, right, Abel Bet Macha, it's not even on the map here, and Tel Dan, right, with the stories of the cultic precinct from the days of Jeroboam I, and Chatzor, none of these were part of the Israelite kingdom. And even later, during the early 9th century, with the Omarites, Abel Bet Macha and Tel Dan were not part of the Israelite kingdom. Only in the days of Jeroboam II, in the 8th century, Abel Bet Macha became part of the Israelite kingdom. And so we asked this question, and we are already excavating the sites for several years. You can see that the remains of the Arab village are untouched, and we are excavating around these in several areas of excavation. And we found a major city below the Iron Age city, which belongs to the Canaanite period of the 2nd millennium, but we're focusing on remains from the Iron Age. And I will show very briefly 3 of our excavation areas and the remains that we find. So my question is, was Abel Bet Macha occupied during the 10th, 9th century? Or was it just deserted and you know, belongs to the 8th century as reconstructed by some scholars? And so area B is located here on the upper part of the Tel, and you can see that an enormous citadel was excavated there. I can't go into detail, I have no time. I will just say that some exquisite finds were found in this citadel. You can see some Phoenician pottery and this very famous figurine head, and this seal bearing a Phoenician boat impression. And it's not a seal, sorry, it's a pendant, and other artifacts, this painted figurine, etc. And we have done some radiocarbon dating, and we know now that the beginning of the construction of the citadel is in the 10th century BC, and that this citadel does not exist after the 9th century BC, no 8th century. The story of the head is a story that I don't have time to tell. It was publicized all over the world. It was found facing up, and you can see this wonderful bearded guy holding up the bearded figurine. He was just visiting for a couple of hours, and he found the little guy, and you can see how exquisite this piece is. It's made of faience, of ancient kind of a glass, tinted green, black hair, yellow stripes. But as far as the research into this figurine, it's a kind of a I don't know how to describe, like a general way of how Semites are being portrayed in various places in the Near East. Egypt, definitely. These are from the New Kingdom of Egypt, and you can see how the Canaanites are described, Semites, but you can see that Assyrian clerks look quite similar. I'm jumping ahead to area A in the eastern part of the Tel. Here we have a wonderful sequence of Iron Age. You can see that this red building of the Iron Age 1, the 11th century, is quite exquisite, well built and destroyed in the massive conflagration. On top of it, all these blue walls are our 10th and 9th century occupation, and a lot of baking was going on. All these marked taboons, and you can see this beautiful granary built in stone here, and how these taboons look while we excavate them. And we had this very interesting impression showing an individual holding some horned animals by their necks. And why is this important? First of all, we call this guy the Lord of the Animals, and it's a famous cultic scene, but it was found at Tel Dan, again, which allegedly does not exist at this time, 10th, 9th centuries. And so this is slowly, we're gathering information about the 10th and 9th centuries, and we have radiocarbon dates, and none of them go past the 9th century. Another exquisite find was found on top of this stone floor dated to the 9th century, and you can see this amazing jar filled with these astragali bones used in ancient cultures for divination, for asking questions. And you can see how it was just standing on top of this elevated podium and was just left there. Some kind of a ceremony that occurred, and after which everyone just abandoned the site. Very interesting. You can see how all these astragali bones, 406 in number, look like in the laboratory: sheep, goat, deer. And of course, I remind you of the famous long ago they used to ask. One last find from Area K, a very new find. This building is a kind of a storage room, and you can see that many jars were found crushed, one of them bearing an inscription that says Le Benayo, okay, belonging to Benayo. It's Hebrew script. The jar is local. It's a systematic production, and it's filled with wine. And again, it points towards some kind of an Israelite affiliation with the name of the God of Israel incorporated in the name, and the form of the word, and the script, and everything. And so I think you understand where I'm going with this. So our program is a one-year program. Basically, it's a little bit more than 1 year. There's a season of excavation at the end of the year, and it's going to be very intensive. We have a non-research track at the end of which you receive, after fulfilling all the requirements, an MA degree. Otherwise, you stick around for a little longer, and you write, instead of 2 seminar papers, you make one of the seminar paper into what we call a thesis, a research study, perhaps on one of our collections or other subjects of interest. And this goes into a research track. And we have a lot of courses. We're going to be speaking about the Canaanite period. We're going to speak about the Iron Age period, about subjects like architecture and cult and pottery, and the interaction between the Levant and its neighbors, and of course about Jerusalem. And what we have our teachers here at the Institute of Archaeology are going to be teaching in this program: Professor Yossi Garfinkel, myself, also Dr. Igor Kremerman. We will have 2 very nice courses by professors that are already retired. Professor Amnon Bento is going to speak about his excavations in Chatzor for a semester. We also have Professor Ilan Sharon, who is going to speak about Phoenician material culture. Of course, part of the program will be to tour the Thursdays we keep without teaching, because some of them will be dedicated to travel to archaeological sites. The excavation is a 3-week, very intensive excavation. We have study collections, we have analytical laboratories, we have possibilities for internships, we have a great library, etc., etc. It's a great program. And I'm going to turn to Nomi to tell us something about the tuition.
Okay, firstly, I want to thank you. That was so informative, incredibly interesting. I'm going to talk briefly about the logistics. I work in the graduate division as sort of the academic administrator. So once you've been admitted onto the program, then I'm the person that sort of takes care of courses and the administration that goes along with that. So briefly, how much does it cost? Tuition is $11,100 plus $1,570, which includes the excavation and field trips. They are mandatory. We do have scholarships available. For more information on them, I'm going to put a link to an email in the chat. Amy Sarusi, who works in admissions, and she'll be able to give you more information on what's available in terms of scholarships. Similarly, how do I apply? We have the link on the slideshow, and again, I'll put it in the chat so you can all access how to apply as part of the program. The deadline is August 1st. So there's about 6 weeks left to apply. We do require that students coming onto the program have a bachelor's degree from an accredited university with a minimum 3.2 GPA, which is sort of a B average or equivalent. You need to provide a CV, write a statement of purpose, and we require 2 academic recommendations. In terms of English, so the course is taught in English, we need a TOEFL exam score of over 80 or above, i.e. LTS exam score of 6 or above. If we go on to the next slide. Thank you. On top of the course, the program, which is obviously fascinating, coming to study at the HUJI, we have a wonderful graduate community coordinator called Ben, who puts on extracurricular activities for all of our students. So on top of the excavations you'll be taking part in, there are trips around Israel to learn more about the country in general, lectures outside of the main course of study. We offer Shabbat and holiday meals and also activities with Israeli students. Place a lot of emphasis on community building. We also have on-campus housing available for all our international students. And again, if you contact Amy in admissions, she'll be able to let you know what's available to you.